right, class. All right, class. Settle down, settle down. No cigarettes, those are bad for you. All right. Are y'all ready to talk about Charles Darwin finally? Finally?
Yes, yeah, finally.
All right. I know you are excited for this lesson. So okay, whenever you think of Charles Darwin, what's the first thing that y'all think of? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Evolution.
Galapagos.
Both good answers. Evolution, yes, is the theory that he's most well known for, or hated for amongst some communities. Yes, and the Galapagos Islands was the location he's most famous for discovering species and discovering. I think he did discover the islands themselves. But how do y'all think that those things, evolution and the Galapagos, they sound like just two random things. How can they apply to you in today's, based off of prior knowledge? Or is there anything that you can think of that you might use the knowledge of evolution for? Like why you would want to use evolution? Do you believe in evolution?
I believe in evolution. I think Charles Darwin is important to know if we're going to talk about animals in our world today and how they evolved to become what they are.
Yes, that's very true. The way that we see animals today is based off of how they've evolved over past generations, like you just said. So, good. So, think about that whenever we're discussing this lesson is, how does this really apply to real life? Because science is everyday kind of stuff, and we're not just trying to teach you random, crud. We're trying to give you good information, and evolution is one of the best scientific, discoveries that we've had, honestly, when it comes to biology and just knowing about animals themselves. But okay, let's go ahead and get into it. The ship that Charles Darwin sailed on was called the Beagle, like the dog, the Beagle. About 1/4 of Darwin's notes and field book were dedicated to this location that amazed him the most. And the trip was over 5 years long. That's how long the voyage was. And for 1/4 of his entire notes to be about one set of islands that he was on when he visited multiple places tells you that he thought this place was pretty special. And he didn't know it at the time, but it says that it was the location that amazed him the most. So, they must have been really impressive. For him to really focus on it that much. He visited four islands in the Galapagos. The first one, and make sure y'all are taking notes.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Because we will be doing a one-pager at the end of class. Keep that in mind. So like I said, the first island was San Cristobal. He arrived there September 16th, 1835. He landed 5 times, pushed by his interest of the volcanic and cratered island. So I would take it that, what do you think a volcanic island looks like when it comes to the color or landscape?
It's very, very tall island, but very thin. Very tall with just the volcano and maybe vegetation around.
What color do you think it would be though? If it's
just all gray.
if it was fresh too, like a fresh new island.
Brand new island, probably black.
That's what I'm
like a black.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because a lot of volcanic islands have that black obsidian look to it. So for that time period, they probably have never seen anything like that. That probably amazed them to see an island with that kind of landscape and, like you said, kind of like jagged, but then also flat and gray. It was a very unique look of the island. Like I said, he landed there 5 times. His first impression of the dry coast was of a deserted and isolated place. Kind of like you said, like it was flat and nothing there. He did not find tropical richness as he expected. So, which is funny because he still landed there 5 times, so something must have caught his eye. But not tropical. In this island, he had the chance to collect the first species that would later be the base and foundation of the theory of evolution. So this is what set everything into effect with his theory. And that species was the Cristobal, named after the island, mockingbird. So, second island we went to, Floriana. He spent 3 days to collect species, and the second bird led him to conclusions in the future that the Florida mockingbird, he said he noticed that there were differences between the two, just between the two islands. They were both mockingbirds, but just in that small distance, they were different, and they had different adaptations to their environment. He realized the difference in between the previous specimen found in St. Cristobal and started to pay more attention to the species. Later, he would discover 4 species to be found in the archipelago and understand a pattern of evolution due to the adaptation differences from each other according to the environmental features of each island. So like I said, he noticed that there was small differences between these, same species of birds, basically. So then that takes us to the third island, Isabella. He reached here September 29th, 1835. And we'll talk about it in a second, but it started in 1831, so that gives you a time of reference. 1835, trip around the island and through the channel in between Fordino. He described the island as mostly deserted and volcanically active. So this, like we can see, like the big island of Hawaii, big black island with active pools of lava and magma flowing down. So that's probably what they saw. But like I said, barren, completely deserted. He said he observed the lava flows and the smoke coming from the craters. Here he discovered a group of iguanas that were they were both marine and terrestrial. And that to him, they were kind of like ancient creatures, because they had never seen anything like that before. We know them as amphibians. But after that, boat sailed around. He just sailed around a little bit longer there. Not much else happened on Isabella. Kind of a boring island, I guess. The last island, Santiago, disembarked on October 8th. This is where he stayed the longest. He, like that quarter of his notes that were on these islands, most of it was on this island, Santiago. He noticed the first difference in between tortoises from different islands with his own eyes. Like I said earlier, once he noticed those differences between the mockingbirds, he started to pay attention to the physical features of the animals more closely. And he was impressed by the amount of tortoises that had different shapes and sizes. He would think that they would all be one uniform look or one uniform archetype, but they were different. On this island, he noticed that most species were similar, but different from other in the islands, given enough evidence to theorize that species change. So this just gave him more evidence to validate his hypothesis that there's different adaptations for these different islands based off the ecosystem and the environment that they're in. So Santiago, a very important island that he visited. Brief description of Darwin. I know we've talked about him a lot, but just a background. He was 22 years old when he started his voyage in 1831. 22 years old. Y'all are 12, 13. Imagine being 22, going on a ship across the ocean to search for stuff. Y'all are watching PewDiePie videos. Wow, look at this 22-year-old. Y'all think that's funny, but this guy had more clout than all. Seriously, 22 years old. Hey, raindrop. Drop. In England, he had a background in science. That's what he studied. So naturally, he had a scientific mind frame and mindset. One thing that's very ironic about his voyage, he was very seasick, extremely seasick, to the point where he would have to get off the ship before anyone else. He would spend most of his time on the islands. He hated being on the boats and sailing. Oh yeah, and his upbringing was very comfortable, very rich. He had a pretty normal life, nothing too out of the ordinary. Oh yeah, and one other thing, he was what you would call a naturalist. He noticed and described about every single detail of the rocks, plants, and animals he saw. So he really, when it comes to a scientist and observing things, we observe things all the time, but for his time, and especially his age, for such a young man, he was very, very, he scrutinized everything in a way, in a good way. He looked at everything, examined every detail. He wanted to see what was different, what was the same. And that kind of mindset is what eventually led to the theory of evolution, because of that mindset that he had. So, all jokes aside about, YouTube and stuff, like, very impressive for someone that age at that time to do what he did. And an interesting note, 1831, like I said, that's when the voyage started. He kept his information that he had in this theory to himself and to his very close colleagues, like very, very, like strictly a few people. Silence that. Please do. Be a pit next time. But like I said, he only shared this information with a few people, and he didn't release it to the scientific community until 1858. So, class, what's 1858 minus 1831?
1727.
27. Yes, 27 years after the voyage started. So I guess you can say 22 years after the voyage ended. But it was quite a long time for him to hold this information, especially considering how revolutionary it turned out being. Yeah, like I said, lasted 5 years. Highly influenced on geology. And none of this is going to be on the exam, so we're going to go ahead and end right there for the day. Go ahead and pull out a piece of paper. Start your one-pager. Start your one-pager.
I'm beginning.
Okay.
No.
Or any attitude.
That's what we got.
I'm just kidding, Chad. You're fine. But yeah, make sure to get that one-pager done. We're going to talk about. We've already talked about the theory of evolution before, but this was more of a broad expanding. But I want you all to talk about in this one-pager what you learned about Charles Darwin. What you learned about it. Draw a picture. Make it colorful. Make it nice. Put some effort into it. And then we're gonna have a gallery walk. You know what that is. You're gonna go around looking at everyone's and seeing their different ideas. And then I'll see y'all on Monday. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm gonna go ahead and check my phone. That's what teachers do.